are a little bit west of Two Harbors on the North Shore at a property that is being treated for spruce budworm damage. This property is owned by Jordan Blessing. He lives out here with his family. He's got a couple kids and they're kind of homesteading out here, and they've got a lovely view out over the shore. And very quickly realized that they had a problem. They've got a lot of dead and dying balsam fir and spruce. Really big fire hazard, doesn't look great. Makes it hard to go out here and enjoy the property and do any recreation. It's not great for the other trees. This is a really gorgeous site with a lot of maple, and it's actually really unique with how much oak is out here. And it was all swallowed up by the dead balsam fir. So anything to get those out and improve the forest health. They actually saw their neighbor had a similar project, saw the logger out there working, went over and talked to them. That happened to also be one of our projects. So the logger connected them to me, and I came out here, walked the property with the landowner, put together a plan, kind of mapped out the different sections of the property and what our goals were going to be, put their application together, and they were lucky enough to get funded.
So my property sits up on a hill. It's kind of in a quiet part of this region. It's 20 acres and it's a mix of a lot of pine, spruce, balsam, but it's also got some neat hardwoods with oak, maple, elm, and some birch. If you were to look at a map at where our house is inland off of Lake Superior and draw a line straight to, we're probably 6 to 8 miles inland off of Lake Superior. But on clear days, now with the forest more open and up on our ridge, we can get a good view of it. I live here with my wife, my son who's 6, and we also have 2 dogs. We love playing outside. We've lived here for almost 5 years now, and over that 5-year period, the trees were changing. It was always a very thickly forested kind of overgrowth with spruce and balsam, which we actually kind of like the look of. But over the few years we've been here, we slowly watched the trees wither away, dry up, and die. And this was causing a lot of problems. They were blowing down. We were constantly having to clean up our trail system. Sometimes driving to work, there'd be one down across the road. So it was becoming a problem, and it was noticeable more and more each year. That had us worried. We got to thinking more about wildfires, and that too had us worried. And of course, last summer, there was the Greenwood Lake fire not that far from here. And that similarly got us thinking, oh my goodness, a log home out here with all of this dead standing spruce and balsam. We should maybe get after that. And we had some neighbors not too far away that had actually worked with the program before. They referred us to how to get in contact with people in the department. And from there, it was really quite easy once we made contact. So the plan really was set up between Beth and I. We talked about my property. We talked about the problem I was seeing with the dying trees. And she was already familiar with this in the area. And so from there, she was able to pull up all of the property maps and the satellite imaging of my property. She was able to, from that, look at the topography lines and was able to kind of section off different areas. And then she would walk through. So her and I got to walk the property on the trails and off as we were doing species count to get a sense of what healthy trees we had and to get a sense of the degree of those dying spruce and those dying balsam. And so she made up a grid, she mapped out the property, she made a plan for where the forestry project should advance, and from there, off of her drafted work, we then took that to Hall Forestry, and they agreed with the plan and found it easy to access with their equipment, and that's how we progressed forward. And that was fantastic. They were such an easy company to work for. They had worked with this program before, so they understood the scope of the job. And they came out, they assessed the property. We again did a walkthrough together, and they had a plan in place for every inch of this acreage of how they could access it, how they could do it the most effective way, and preserve the most number of good, healthy trees. And then in June of this year, they came out and did the project. And it took about 10 days total for them to make their way through the property, clearing out the dead spruce and balsam. Once Josh and Brian came from Hall Forestry, it was fun. I had a couple of days off, as well as Hudson and my wife Jenny, and we would just watch them from the window. They came in with 2 pieces of equipment that did the bulk of the work. One was a skid steer that had a big mulching attachment on the front, and the other was a large excavator that similarly had a large mulching head on the end of it. And with those 2 pieces of equipment, they would go through and they would be able to mulch right there, the standing dead timber. They would also be able to mulch what was on the ground as well as they mowed over it. And it left all of the mulch there, so it scattered a thin layer of coarse mulch all across the 20 acres, relatively evenly distributed, so there weren't big piles or anything like that. And that mulch is already starting to decay down, and I imagine in a couple of years it will be back into the soil. and it's made it really easy to get around. It's made a world of difference having cleared it out. It used to be so thick with overgrowth spruce and balsam that you couldn't even behind me throw a baseball without it going, you maybe get it to go 10 feet, but it was just so dense. Now that it's opened up, it's been an incredible property. Just sitting, watching wildlife, peering through the forest, through the open swaths, and the amount of time we get to spend now hiking, snowshoeing, once in a while cross-country skiing, and we've even set up 2 campsites out on the property that me and my son set up in the summer, and we'll spend nights out there now that we have more space and it's so much more accessible. Especially with the forest being a bit more open, we've identified some topography that actually has made some excellent sledding hills for my 6-year-old, but also for me too. We've had a lot of snow this winter and it just seems to keep coming, but it makes this place look even more beautiful. I think the snow depth here must be close to, I bet you we're pushing 40 inches now. We just got another 8 or 10 inches earlier this week to add to it. So I was trying to get ready for this day where we'd be out in the woods more, and I've been a little busy at work. I haven't had much time to keep up with the trails, and so the snow depth kind of got away from me. I thought, boy, if I could get lucky, I would take this vintage Yamaha snowmobile out on the trails and pack it down to make it a little easier. But I only made it about 100 yards. It was about 1 minute of snowmobile time and 45 minutes of trying to dig it out. On the days where Hudson's not at school and I'm not at work, we try to get out in the woods one way or the other. Today we're planning on going for a walk. We're going to try to make it out to where there's some big oak trees we like to go by and then circle back to the house after that. I think our whole family, my wife and son included, are very happy with moving forward, having this done, because it made our property accessible. The hiking has been incredible. The views, as we get up high, we can see the lake like never before. Although we're quite inland, when we get up on the higher ridges, we have great views of the lake now. And we have sledding, we have opportunities to go on snowmobile rides when it's not quite so deep. It's really made this whole 20 acres a big playground for my 6-year-old. And we like keeping an eye on the animals too, so we have some trail cameras set up and we see what kind of wildlife passes through this area. One of the biggest things that we've seen in terms of improvement after getting the logging done was the wildlife. I do think things slowed down a little bit. I think the heavy equipment going through for that week scared a few critters away, but it didn't take long to see that the benefit really paid off. We've seen more wildlife now this late summer, fall, and now early winter than we ever had before. Prior to this, it was so thick, it was almost impossible to walk through. For myself, I imagine wildlife had a similar problem. And now that it's more clear and more open, we've seen more white-tailed deer than ever before. Some of the biggest bucks I've seen in the area have been crossing through on my trail cams. For a while, we had pine marten and fisher. Those were scared away for a while, but now this fall, we've been seeing more pine marten and fisher. And even this fall, right before hibernation, we had a black bear family, a mama and 2 cubs that were circling through the area. And I just think it's easier to get around, and I think it's opening up more food sources too as the sunlight's come through and some of that underbrush has started to grow up even already. Initially, after the company went through, the mulch was pretty thick, but it's a pretty coarse mulch, so there's a lot of air gaps, and stuff started to grow back through in terms of regrowth quite quickly. We've seen several oak saplings already starting. We've seen a large amount of ferns, and we're getting a lot of our thimbleberries back as well. It's made a huge difference. So to start the program, I didn't even know where to begin, other than I had some phone numbers. So I contacted NRCS, set up a meeting with Bethany, and so we reached out to her and set up a time to meet with her in the Duluth office, and she was sort of our point person with the program. And she made the rest very easy. We kind of talked about our situation, our location, and then she came out and her and I walked the property. We went through the acreage. She was looking at the degree of how much spruce and balsam we had and what the rest of the forest mix was. And she sort of separated out the acreage into different areas, highlighting where the problem was, and made up a plan from there in terms of pursuing next steps with logging and forestry companies. Working with Beth was incredible. She was a tour guide for this whole project. She knew what the scope of the project was. She had a lot of past experience in how this works. And so she was phenomenal. She was easy to reach. She would answer all of my questions. And on more than one occasion, she came out to the property to be part of the planning, to be part of the species count, and to be part of watching as the job progressed.
There's a lot of sugar maple on this site, which is really shade tolerant and has probably been hiding out underneath the balsam, waiting for its chance to pop up in the sun for a long time. So I want to give it a chance to do that before I come in and do anything else. This would be a tough site to plant. There's a lot of rock in the ground, but we are also doing lots of planting projects, lots of deer caging. This area has really high deer populations. They all come down during the winter to yard up along the North Shore where it's a little bit warmer, and they eat up all of our white pine and white cedar, which are the best. That's the classic North Shore tree, is the white pine. That's what we want out here. And so we're helping a lot of people put up deer exclosures so that they can plant trees and have them actually survive. This project was funded through EQIP, the Environmental Quality Incentive Program. Our cost share is a flat rate, so if you can get it done for that amount, that's fantastic. If it costs you more, that's on the landowner. I'm fine with coarse woody debris. It's fantastic. It's good for wildlife. It's good for soil health. It's better for regeneration. If you're wondering about what you can do on your forested property, you can certainly reach out to your local Natural Resource Conservation Service office. Minnesota has some excellent private consulting foresters that are also happy to help.
If another landowner would like to work on a project similar to this or believes they have a forest-related resource concern on their property, I would recommend reaching out to either the NRCS or a local soil and water conservation district so they can see the project as a whole, what needs to be done, why it needs to be done, and they can get from point A to B, finishing the project and resolving any resource concerns they may have.
You know, I couldn't recommend this enough. I think anybody living here on the North Shore where there's been the spruce budworm problem, and if they have dying spruce, dying balsam on their property to any degree, I think it's worth reaching out to NRCS. They're very helpful with planning, they're very helpful with assessing the degree of your problem and helping identify if there's resources or financial cost sharing available. It was so easy once I made first contact to just go through those steps. It's a small amount of paperwork, really not much, and it's like you get a tour guide and an expert that really helps plan the project, and it makes a world of difference on your property.
This is a really important landscape on the North Shore. There's a lot of unique plant communities up here, a lot of unique wildlife. A lot of people have strong ties to this landscape for recreation, and their families have been around here for a long time. So protecting it is really important, and taking good care of it is really important, both for the people living here now and for future generations.
Cleaning up around houses is really important just because of the fuel load around that house. A lot of these jobs, we treat them as if they were our own property. We don't want to do something on someone else's property that we wouldn't do on our own. My own house, we had a lot of dead balsam. I live a few miles away from here, and we went through and took out all of that balsam and cleaned up the forest, and now I've got healthy young woods. If we have a fire that comes through our neighborhood, I know that my property is going to be a portion that would be a fire break, similar to this property right here, which in turn would save their house, save kids, save families, livelihoods. It's very important to keep those dead fuels away from the places that we live.
You have things like the Greenwood fire that occurred last year, devastating a lot of acres. That might not be completely mitigated through projects like these, but the risk on a home would be significantly reduced through this project.
I think this project was one of the best ideas I've had. I'm so glad my neighbors informed me about it, and then making contact with Beth at NRCS and planning it. It was so helpful. I was really worried about wildfire, and not only that, but the headache of constantly having trees falling down and a tangled mess to clean up every weekend, and even the lightest windstorms. So I 100% would recommend this. It would really be a cost-prohibitive thing to do on your own if you were to say, as a private landowner, I'm going to clear 20 acres by myself or with a logging company. But with the NRCS program and the cost sharing that comes with that, it was a no-brainer for us. I'm very happy with doing it.